Welcome, everyone. My name is Jenna Gold. I am the Senior Director of Supplier Solutions for Procurated. If you've never heard of Procurated before, it is the ratings and reviews platform for state and local governments, as well as K through 12 and universities. All of you should have pages on Procurated. If you have not claimed them yet, please do so today. You can go to procurated.com/suppliers. You'll be able to log in and make sure all of your information is clear and up to date. So when governments are looking for your services, they can find you. But today is not all about Procurated. Today is really about cybersecurity. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to let these other two wonderful people introduce themselves as well.
Hi, thank you, everybody. I'm Leah McGrath, and just really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today, and look forward to hearing your questions and thoughts as we talk about StateRAMP. I have the privilege and honor of being the Executive Director of StateRAMP. We're going to talk about what StateRAMP is and how it works later, but my background is in largely state and local government. Spent about 20 years working in and around government. Most recently, prior to joining StateRAMP, served as deputy mayor for the city of Fishers, Indiana. And so, when this opportunity came to be a part of an initiative that is bringing the public sector together with the private sector to improve cybersecurity across the country, I jumped at the chance, and am excited to share a little bit with you about our journey today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Smith with Government Sourcing Solutions, and we are a consulting firm that helps, works with state and local government to improve their operations, specifically around procurement. And my background is I worked for the state of Illinois for over 20 years. Last several years, I was over procurement and over fleet and other support functions. And we work with both Procurated and StateRAMP. Working with state and local government. So I look forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
So let's kick it back over to Leah with the question that I knew that I needed to ask before we even started this. What is cybersecurity? What does that even mean?
Right. Well, we're going to walk through a couple of examples that I think we can all relate to, unfortunately. But cybersecurity are the steps that we take, very simply, the steps that we take to keep the bad actors out, to keep people we don't want into our systems out of our systems. So, on a personal level, it's like locking the doors at night, making sure your windows are closed, setting the alarm if you have an alarm, making sure everyone who has access to your house, who has a key, is responsible and safe. Right. And it's the same thing. So imagine from the government's perspective, who has the responsibility of protecting data, confidential data, our systems, really our utilities, clean water, right? Our way of life, our bandwidth, our Wi-Fi. I have 3 teenage sons. If our Wi-Fi goes out, I'm the first to know because they are, yelling. So these are things that are really important. That's what cybersecurity is. And I think what we're seeing more and more, as we'll talk about, is cybersecurity as a team sport. Cybersecurity, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when I started in the workforce, cybersecurity was really, first of all, not anything anyone talked about. And secondly, was relegated to the responsibility of the IT department, right? So many of you may remember when someone was coming in, if you had new software, they'd walk in with a CD-ROM, they being whoever the IT person is, install software on your computer, and you'd go about your day. Now, we're all using cloud solutions every day to deliver solutions and to do our business. And so cybersecurity is something that each of us plays a role in. And that's what StateRAMP helps bring together. So I think we wanted to do, actually, yeah, do you want, before we get into deeply, we wanted to know a little bit about kind of the audience and those who are participating today what your experience is. So I'll let you launch a few polls.
All right, the first one is launched.
So have you heard of StateRAMP? Have you heard of FedRAMP?
All right, we're 50-50 on FedRAMP.
How about StateRAMP?
StateRAMP, we are about 41% right now.
All right,
And they have heard of it.
awesome.
All right, let's end that one. Let me share the results. Are you able to see those?
Yeah. Yep, I am.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, now let me see if I can launch my second one. Here we go. All right, the second one is launched.
So this is around cybersecurity breaches. Has your company ever experienced a cybersecurity event or breach? Have you personally experienced a cybersecurity breach?
Okay. Looks like we have most people answered. Are you able to?
I can see that. So it looks like about 20% said yes about your company and 25% said yes personally. My guess is more of you have had some kind of confidentiality breach than you realize. And we're going to talk about that now. So one of the best ways that I found, I'm going to share my screen. So let's make sure I'm sharing correctly. There we go. To help us relate to what we're talking about is to just look at cybersecurity and cyber attacks through the years. Some of these names and events may be familiar to you. They may be things that you recall. And as we look at each of these events, what has been really important is that we learn something from every incident that occurs. We learn something about how the attackers are getting in, that we can learn then how to be more secure moving forward. But it also really underscores the importance of everybody taking action and being responsible for cybersecurity. So I go back to the mid-1990s. I don't know how many of you recall the You've Got Mail worm virus. The worm viruses. This wasn't just in You've Got Mail, but there was this virus. This was the first really that people saw and were affected by on a more kind of general population stance. And it was an I love you email. What that meant was you would receive an email and it said, I love you in the subject. If you opened it, it said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it loved you so much that it would basically shut down and take control of your computer. So your computer would freeze. It was the first virus that many of us experienced on our computers. And out of that came different softwares, McAfee and others that you may be familiar with that we would install. And that was our first action of cybersecurity as the general population. Move forward and we started seeing breaches occur in financial industry and with confidential information. And from 2003 to 2007, TJ Maxx at the time experienced the largest breach that had yet occurred of consumer credit card data. 45.7 million credit and debit shoppers were affected by this, and TJ Maxx had to pay out almost $250 million as a result of this breach. Here's what was interesting. This happened because of unsecure Wi-Fi, right? Our systems you could hop through this Wi-Fi. Imagine these criminals hopping through Wi-Fi from one system to another. And this is when we learned how important secure Wi-Fi is. So if you've ever stayed at a hotel and you can't get access to the Wi-Fi from your laptop because of security protocols in place, that's a good thing. And this is why. So we learned something from this breach, and it had ripple effects across the financial industry and the markets as they realized how at risk they were through the cloud. In 2011, paying attention to that, FedRAMP was established. So for those of you who've not heard of FedRAMP, FedRAMP is a federal program that was established in 2011. And FedRAMP is a program that is required for any cloud service provider who wants to do business with the federal government. They have to have a FedRAMP authorization. And that's an authorization that says this is a cloud service product. This is a cloud product that meets minimum security standards. So the federal government was paying attention, and also around this time had a pretty significant breach of their personnel department as well, and said, we've got to make sure that for the suppliers we're working with, they're secure. And so FedRAMP began in 2011, and it actually started with the Department of Defense. In 2013 was the Target breach. If you weren't affected by TJ Maxx, you may have been affected by Target, because these cyber criminals were really smart, and they attacked Target during the holiday season of 2013. Accessing 40 million credit and debit users and 70 million customer records. Target had to pay out over 18 million in settlement fees, and it's estimated that they lost over $200 million through this attack. This is the first one that really made everyone stand up and say, oh my, because it happened through a third-party vendor. This didn't happen through any of Target's own systems. It happened through a third-party vendor, and that was their third-party HVAC vendor. So we don't always think about HVAC or systems like that as being connected to the cloud, but they certainly are. And when they are, that creates a potential portal for criminals to get through if it's not secure or segregated, as was the case in Target's breach. So that was a really interesting one. In 2017, the Equifax breach affected 147 million Americans. This breach was interesting because the hacker originally came through a consumer complaint portal. Think about how many governments, how many companies have consumer complaint portals or websites, right, on their systems or on their website. That's how someone was able to get through here. So we're seeing how connected all of our data and systems are and can be through the cloud. SolarWinds occurred in 2020 at the same time that StateRAMP was founded. And SolarWinds was the largest digital supply chain attack that ever hit government. And it hit government across the country. It hit the federal government, state governments, local governments. This one was sneaky. It is thought to be nation state sponsored. It is thought to be one of the most sophisticated of its kind. But what happened was SolarWinds had a software that was actually installed to help protect. That its goal is to help improve cybersecurity. And the criminals installed malware so that when an update was released, unknowingly, it released malware into these systems. And this one, there were congressional hearings about SolarWinds. When we get into the digital supply chain, really just brought the emphasis and the importance of whether you're working with software providers, or infrastructure or platform providers. It just brought kind of to that forefront and to everyone's attention how important that security is. In 2021, this was the Colonial Pipeline. Some of you may recall seeing photos on the news of cars that were backed up for miles waiting to get gas in southeastern United States. This was good old ransomware, where some criminals accessed a password that was actually, it was an employee's login and password. That employee was no longer there. They found it, they used it, they were able to access systems, and they quite literally left a note and said, if you want your data back, you're going to give us money. And this was ransomware that led to the Colonial pipeline being shut down for 5 days while the company dealt with that. That really, I think, illustrated very visibly for us the impact that cyber events can have on our day-to-day life, and underscores again that importance of making sure that everybody who's connected is kind of doing their part to make sure that security best practices are being followed, and that there's ongoing communication. And this is really the backdrop as to what was happening when StateRAMP was founded. So I'm going to advance the slide and talk just a little bit about StateRAMP so we all have a level set and understanding as to what StateRAMP is. So I'm going to move forward. StateRAMP is a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c6. That means we're a membership organization. And we were founded by about a dozen current and former state CIOs, privacy officers, procurement officers. We have private sector subject matter experts come together to say, what if we all came together? What if we all came together to recognize best practices for cloud security, and in doing so to recognize a common method to verify the cloud security of suppliers? So what was happening is governments across the country were grappling with that question of, how do we verify that the suppliers we're working with not only can deliver the services we need, but can do so while meeting minimum security requirements, and do so ongoing, not just one and done. Because as you can see, cybersecurity, it's an evolution. The criminals are really smart. They're constantly finding new ways to get in. And so we have to be on our toes and constantly understanding how to evolve to meet those threats. And that requires a lot of communication between all of us who are connected. So that's between the supplier community and the governments as well. And so that group came together in 2020 to just say, what if we did come together? And out of that was born StateRAMP. And so StateRAMP, in serving our members, we have membership for providers, we have membership for governments. And for the providers, what we're doing is giving them a path to verify their cloud security posture once in order to serve many. And for the governments, we're creating a shared service that allows them to trust but verify the suppliers they're working with and have that ongoing communication through continuous reporting. So that is the premise of StateRAMP. And I'm sure there are questions. I can tell you one of the first I receive is this. Anyone else? Raise your hand. Yes. Who's involved? So this is a smattering, and actually I think we have a few more dots to add. But we have a couple of different membership categories. One is for individual government members. It is free for government to participate. And so individuals who work for state, local government, higher ed, K through 12, any kind of public agency. And if they've got responsibility for security or procurement or privacy or something related, we invite and welcome them to join as StateRAMP individual members. And that gives them the opportunity to be a part of our committees, to give feedback on policies or ideas, and to access our members only page and kind of database there. For our provider members, these are for any companies who serve government. And it is $500 for our membership to join. And these providers gain access to our members only. They can participate in committees and on our governance committees as well, and provide feedback on policies and procedures. It also gives them the ability to list their verified product on our authorized product list and to go through that security verification process. We do have a number of governments who have announced that they're working with StateRAMP. This is kind of a sampling of the list. You can see the full list on our website. These are governments who have announced that they're working with StateRAMP either at an enterprise or agency level. You can see a couple of agencies listed who are working with StateRAMP to validate their supplier security. We are seeing an uptick in higher ed. The University of North Carolina is participating as a system, as well as some local governments who are starting to really embrace StateRAMP as well. And this helps them, of course, manage their supplier security. These are some of our strategic partners who've been fantastic at helping advise, who help partner in defining these best practices and communicating them. We also work closely, and so you can see it's NASPO, the procurement officials, NASCIO, and K-12-6. We also work really closely with the Center for Digital Government and Center for Internet Security, who also sit on our steering committee. So just a little bit more, I'm going to go quickly through this. But if you want to see more about who's involved, you can go to stateramp.org and view a list of our steering committee members, our board members, and they are phenomenal helping advising at a high level strategic direction, and our standing committees. Our committees really do help advise on the day-to-day and helping establish what those best practices are, what the security requirements are to become StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized. Those are some of our statuses, and helping us think about what's next. So before I keep going on, I just want to pause to see if there are any questions before we dig into any of the details of how it works.
Hey, Leah, it's Mike.
Yeah.
And you know, we had you did the poll survey, and about half of the participants, or more than half, said they weren't familiar with StateRAMP or FedRAMP. Could you just explain what the difference is between the two?
Between StateRAMP and FedRAMP?
Yeah, because there is, you know, the FedRAMP's been out there for several years. StateRAMP started a couple years ago.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences for, especially for those who may already have a FedRAMP certification?
Absolutely. Well, and if you already, I'm going to pull up this slide. Can you see this comparison? Yes, absolutely. Well, and it's such a great question because FedRAMP was first. So we had the benefit, our steering committee had the benefit of having people around the table, or on Zoom screens because it was 2020. But people around the table who were able to give their firsthand experience with FedRAMP. So we were able to really understand what works best. How do we model StateRAMP after FedRAMP in a way that serves state and local government? So, you know, I would say it's modeled in part after FedRAMP, but it's designed for state and local government and the providers who serve them. And this is a good breakdown of the comparison. So both like FedRAMP, StateRAMP is based on NIST 853. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and 853 is really a set of controls and best practices for cloud cybersecurity. Version 5, Rev 5 has come out. We are, like FedRAMP, in the process of moving to and incorporating Rev 5 into our requirements. That will come likely in 2023, right around the same time FedRAMP will move to Rev 5 as well. So we are trying to align that movement with FedRAMP. Like FedRAMP, we also require an independent third-party audit. So that's called a 3PAO, a third-party assessment organization that does an independent audit initially to become StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized. And then every year there's an annual audit required to make sure, like I said, if there are changes that occur, if there's a significant event that occurs, that audit makes sure that things are being done in alignment with those best practices and standards. We both require monthly continuous monitoring reporting. So one of the ways, though, that StateRAMP is different, and I think a real benefit, hopefully, to the provider community as well as to the state and local governments, is that we have a centralized program management office. So we have a central managed PMO. And what that means is that's the security team. And we have one security team who is reviewing every package that comes in to make sure that there is consistency in application of the security requirements. So if it's StateRAMP ready here, it's StateRAMP ready there. And that was something that was really important to the governments that we talked to, especially early on, was to make sure that there was consistency in this security status. The monthly reporting that happens goes to our PMO, and that monthly reporting is done, and everything is done in a secure portal. Nothing is transmitted via email or anything like that. Everything is done in a very secure manner. Also, and this is a big one, StateRAMP is available to any provider regardless of contract status. So to be FedRAMP authorized, you must have a minimum contract with a federal agency for that product. That is key, because what that means is if you are serving state and local government, then FedRAMP and not the federal agencies, then FedRAMP's not even something available to you, right? And so we saw early on some of the states out there who were starting to incorporate requirements into solicitations that they only wanted providers who had a FedRAMP authorization for a product. If you do that, you're eliminating a number of suppliers. And so what our goal and the steering committee's vision was we want to increase the number of qualified providers to state and local government, and StateRAMP is a great path for that. One of the other differences is that we make our documentation available to participating governments. Now that has to be provisioned. Access is provisioned by providers. So providers, you get to choose who gets to see your continuous monitoring, reporting, and documentation. But that is a huge benefit to states and local governments who want access to be able to know that and see that those requirements are being met in an ongoing manner. The other benefit there is if there is an event, if there is a vulnerability, so maybe not even an event, but there's a high vulnerability that the provider knows about. If they report that to the PMO as required, then we can send a notice. The PMO, actually through the technology, can send a notice to the government's, hey, you need to log in. There's something here you need to see. So it's a way for us to encourage that communication, not to be punitive. We've had this conversation a lot. It's not to be punitive. It's so that we can continually improve together and continually secure our systems together. We do have a fast track option. So if you are one of those who has a product that is already FedRAMP authorized, we have a fast track option for those products. What that means is if you already have a product with a FedRAMP authorization and you want to become StateRAMP authorized or FedRAMP ready to StateRAMP ready, you can leverage the same audit and documentation that you submitted to FedRAMP to StateRAMP. And our process takes just a matter of weeks. Really proud of our team and how efficient and responsive that our security team is. So if you ever have questions about that, we'd certainly invite you to reach out and learn more about that option. One of the other questions, Mike, that I hear sometimes is how does this compare to a SOC 2 audit? I don't know if anyone is familiar with that. But I have just a real quick snapshot here too. We should have added that to the poll. I didn't think about it. Have you ever had a SOC 2 audit? But SOC 2 is a report that was established by the American Institute of CPAs, actually. And this was back when there was not already a really good audit available to measure the cyber posture of a product. And so SOC 2 was available, and it can be a very useful audit that can be used. One of the main differences, though, is it is not designed to audit NIST 853. So as we really focus on NIST 853 as the best practice, this just gives you a snapshot of the difference, right? It's really important that you know which audits are measuring what. So again, this is just a snapshot. It's a common question I hear after FedRAMP. This is the next one. How does it compare to SOC 2?
Leah, we do have a specific question in the comments. So it says we offer both live and virtual executive coaching and team training services. For our virtual services, we have an online course that is in the cloud via ThinkFic, with live virtual coaching via Zoom, Microsoft Teams, etc.
Okay.
When seeking local, state, and federal contracts, does my company need StateRAMP, FedRAMP certification? Or do we need to be sure that Zoom, Microsoft Teams, ThinkFic are certified through FedRAMP and StateRAMP?
That's a great point. Without knowing a little bit more, you just need to make sure that whatever cloud product you're using to transmit or store or process data, you want to make sure that cloud solution is secure. So if you're using any other tools beyond Zoom or Microsoft, or however you're doing your business, you would absolutely want to make sure that those are StateRAMP or FedRAMP.
So I think also part of the question is, do they need to reach out to Zoom? Like, so does their company need to get StateRAMP, or does Zoom need to have StateRAMP?
Unless their company has a software that you're using, and it sounds like no, it sounds like they're using other softwares, is that right? Then you would want to reach out to Zoom or Microsoft. Now, what I can tell you also is if we do publish, I'm gonna show you this. If you go to stateramp.org, you can also see our authorized product list. And this is where we publish those. And I say this because Zoom does have a product, and Microsoft has a few products on here. So you might want to take a look who have gone through this process. You want to look at the product. So StateRAMP, like FedRAMP, certifies or authorizes, provides a security status for products, not companies. So companies may have multiple products out there. They may also have multiple products, and some are StateRAMP authorized and some are not, for example. And so you really want to take a look at what are the products that you're using, and do they comply? On our authorized product list, you're going to also see a couple different statuses. One are verified statuses. Those are for people who've gone through, or products that have gone through the entire verification process and achieved that StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized status. We also recognize progressing statuses. So if you scroll down on the page, you'll see another box, and you'll be able to see products that are working through the process. So they're in some stage of working through the process toward becoming StateRAMP ready or authorized. So this just helps you know who you're working with, and others know too, but I'd always encourage you to reach out to those that you're working with, say, hey, are you StateRAMP? If not, where are you in that journey?
We have another question. We provide custom software solutions to government. Should we seek StateRAMP certification?
Probably. Is this one of the questions that I would ask is custom software solutions to do what? And I'm going to show you, let me see if I can. One of the things that we have is a data classification tool. So we have different impact levels, recognizing not, software that's transmitting or processing or storing the nuclear codes, that needs to be high, right? That's probably high plus. If you are processing or storing information that is generally public information, but you're touching these systems, that's probably low, to give you a sense for. So we do have a data classification tool. If you go to stateramp.org, templates-resources, click on that tool, and there are a set of questions that you can ask or answer. And that's going to point you to whether StateRAMP low or moderate or high may be needed or recommended. One of the other things that we have coming soon, so you are among the first to know, is a new status, or not status, but tool available. So this is a StateRAMP security snapshot. We'll be launching this here in the next month or so. And it's something that will be available to providers and governments. Think of this as like a pre-ready assessment before you go through the process. It will be available to products who've not yet achieved StateRAMP ready or authorized. And it essentially is going to assess the level of cyber maturity of a product in relation to being able to achieve StateRAMP ready. So it's going to generate a score. And that score is going to tell you as, you know, a company or a government where that provider is in relation to becoming StateRAMP ready. And it's also a wonderful tool that we're excited about because as a nonprofit, we really want to help providers be successful through this journey. So to achieve or to once they have this snapshot, it's going to tell us where are the gaps, what other resources do they need or assistance do these providers need to be able to become StateRAMP ready. I think that you will likely see this incorporated into solicitation requirements to give governments an ability upfront to assess kind of that NIST compliance and as a tool as well for governments and providers for that runway, right? This is not something that is going to be achieved overnight for most providers. What we want to do is be able to help people understand where you are in the journey, what you need to be successful so that you can be successful.
I think, Leah, when we talked prior to this, we were talking about how it's kind of like the TSA pre-check
Yeah.
Working with governments, right? Like you pay for it, but it ends up getting you through security a lot faster.
Exactly. That is, I love that analogy. I've shared that with some people on our team. And there, you know, there's work involved, but it's not just getting you through that security line faster, which it will. It's going to be the easy button for, you know, getting through the security review of governments. It's going to make those T's and C's simpler. You're going to be able to get to work faster. Those are huge, huge benefits. But you're also going to be able to have a stronger cyber posture. You're going to be more secure. You're going to be ready, more ready should an event occur. And you're also going to be a part of that team, right? Like if you decide to work with government, you're on the team because cybersecurity is a team sport. So now you're on that team helping keep the bad actors out. And so the TSA example is just fantastic. To that point, I do want to make sure, another question I hear often is the cost. So there is a cost to become StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized. And that's paid to our security team, to the PMO. Right now, those costs are $2,500 to become StateRAMP ready for that review, $5,000 for the authorized review, and then ongoing every year, there's a $5,000 fee for that continuous monitoring activity. Those fees we've been analyzing them, and one of the things we're going to be rolling out here very soon. So stay tuned. If you don't receive our emails, sign up at stateramp.org so you do. But we are going to be making some adjustments to those fees. Those will be the middle fees for the security reviews, but we're going to align so that those who have smaller businesses perhaps will pay less, those who have larger will pay more. So we're trying to scale that according to the business's needs and size.
Yeah, and Leah, while you're on this page here with the governments, I think too it's important to understand, you know, in the government operations where, you know, suppliers that want to do business with government, you know, governments are looking, both the technology shops and the procurement shops are looking at cybersecurity, and they're developing the policies, the plans for when they're doing the bids, doing the contracts, the agreements, to work with companies where there is going to be a technology component to it. You know, how do they verify the cybersecurity element to it? And as to you alluded to earlier, you're going to start seeing solicitations. Are you StateRAMP certified?
Yeah.
You know, and we're not to the point yet, I don't think, where governments are going to require it 100%, but they're going to get to that point at some point in the future, maybe. But I think they're currently working on different levels where, you know, they're going to want you as a supplier to be in the process somewhere, to be looking at, maybe give you an incentive to look at StateRAMP as a certification, or to do something to start preparing for cybersecurity compliance in some way. And I think you're working with a lot of suppliers and a lot of governments in that realm.
That's such a great point. I just brought up, this is a slide that kind of outlines the steps for incorporating StateRAMP and the security snapshot into the procurement process. And this is what I think you'll see. What I think is so valuable about this is it gives an on-ramp. It gives that time for compliance, and it sets the, kind of the expectations, like you were saying, Mike. So being able to identify what's that security impact level? Are we talking about low impact, moderate impact, or something else? Being able to have something up front to understand where are you in the process. And then what we are seeing is requiring StateRAMP ready within 12 months of contract execution for the awarded vendor, and StateRAMP authorized or provisional is another status within 18 months of contract execution, so that we're really trying to drive toward compliance.
Yeah, and I, right, you want to get this, and if you're a supplier is not started yet.
Yeah.
I've heard of some states who you will ask the question, are you StateRAMP certified?
Yeah.
If you answer no, haven't started yet, there might be another lengthy process you might have to go through to be even considered for an award.
Yep.
So it means
That's a great
states are
point.
basically, and the local governments are saying, look, we're taking this serious, and we have to look at this, and we have to take cybersecurity seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any other questions?
We do have one in the chat. If a software is authorized on StateRAMP, can we assume it's also authorized on FedRAMP?
No. Great question. If you're FedRAMP, you're FedRAMP. If you're StateRAMP, you're StateRAMP. Now, StateRAMP we have a fast track program that allows those who are FedRAMP to come through StateRAMP's process more efficiently. As I mentioned, leveraging the same audit and package that was submitted to FedRAMP, so you're not duplicating that work. We are working on a pilot for a fast track that goes from StateRAMP to FedRAMP. So that's something that we're hoping to really pilot next year. But in both frameworks, you would have to go through that independent validation and verification that those requirements are met. While our requirements are very, very, very similar, there is some delta. For example, there are some control requirements in FedRAMP that are federal specific that are not in StateRAMP, right? So if you were going from StateRAMP to FedRAMP, they would want to validate and verify that, yes, you are meeting those requirements too.
So if I'm a supplier, where, this is a ton of great information. Where do I even begin? Like, how do I, where do I start?
Yes. So I'm going to bring this up. Become a member. That's where you're, come to stateramp.org. If you go to stateramp.org, sign up to receive our emails. That's a great way to make sure that, we send a monthly email. We'll send other information when we have announcements or new things available. So make sure that you're receiving those. You can become a member at stateramp.org/register, or we have a providers page as well that you'll see when you're on the website. Every month we hold a getting started webinar for providers, is specifically for providers. I'll be on there with our PMO director, Noah Brown, who he will go into more of the specifics about, the technical requirements, and also kind of help identify the best ways to begin. We also have getting started guides. We're in the process of updating some of those as well. So we're going to have some new updates coming, especially as we have the snapshot available. So you can take a look at those, but these are good ways to get started. You can also request a one-on-one with our team. If you email info@stateramp.org, we have a number of team members who monitor that and receive that, who can hop on a call to answer questions that you may have that are specific to your product and your situation, to really help advise on those next steps. So I highly encourage that if you are interested in learning more, whether you've become a member or not. If you want that information, please reach out and we'd be happy to hop on a call with you. These are some of the helpful links. If you go to our website, we also have, I don't have it listed here, but if you go to stateramp.org/events, that's where you can register for those monthly webinars, or you can also, if you go to our video archive, you can view past events as well. And those can be really helpful if you're just trying to share information with a colleague or share information with someone else. We invite you to do so.